All right, back with another tier rankings video. This will be my last tier rankings where I do all 32 teams. At the end of the season, I'm going to instead switch to just the playoff teams. So this is the last full power rankings like this, but still should be a lot of fun. So let's get into it, starting as always with the Tennessee Titans, who, they're not playing their best football as of right now. I put them in the bottom tier, which I have now renamed to the Dorian Thompson-Robinson Browns tier. Was at one point the I'm trying to remember what it was at first. It became the Tim Boyle Giants tier. I think it was the Mac Jones Jaguars, then Tim Boyle Giants, finally Dorian Thompson-Robinson Browns, and the Titans. I mean, you're losing to the worst teams in football. We'll put you in that tier. The Miami Dolphins, who, okay, didn't have Tyler Huntley. That was an ugly game. There wasn't good weather. They showed fight in that game. They did. It was funny to see them lose. It was funny to see them lose 2 challenges in like 4 plays. As a whole, they did what they can, and I expect Tua will be back soon, hopefully. So I had them in a solid tier last week. I'm going to keep them there. The Jets, who... Man, I still think there's worse teams than them, but like the mistakes they make are just so much worse than the mistakes other teams make. They're so frustrating to watch. They're just a bad football team. So I don't care like if they look good in moments. They beat themselves just as much as they beat. They don't beat anyone else. So they beat themselves more than they beat anyone. The Cincinnati Bengals. I think so. I had them in the solid tier. I'm going to bump them up to the feels like playoffs tier. Now, just to be clear, I am not saying I think they will be in the playoffs, just that is how they feel as a team. They feel like a playoff team. They got off to that slow start. What really could end up killing their season is that for week 1 loss to the Patriots. Like, that was just a dumb loss, and because of that, very good chance that they are out of the postseason, which is crazy to think about. But they feel like a playoff caliber team. The Browns, who obviously I renamed the bottom tier to the Dorian Thompson-Robinson Browns tier. Obviously, I mean, it's not good. I think Dorian Thompson-Robinson, with all due respect, just hasn't looked great out there this season. Really struggled to get anything going. So not a great team around him, but especially with him, they're struggling. The Jaguars, hey. You won a game. Brian Thomas Jr. is really good. I'll bump you out of the bottom tier. Why not? No, I won't. They were in the bottom tier last week. I'm going to keep them here just because you beat the Titans, who are also in the bottom tier. Not enough for me to take you out of there, I think. The Vikings, who, I gave them the Super Bowl contenders tier, I think just last week. Feels like I should have done it earlier now because they've just been playing such good football down the stretch. I mean, as of right now, I'm kind of even leaning them over Detroit in the final game of the season. They're playing so good, peaking at the right time, all that stuff. So, yeah. They're real contenders. They really are. Next up is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where you think, speaking of peaking at the right time, with the exception of that really stupid Cowboys loss, they've looked great this last month or so. Another dominant win against Carolina. Obviously, that Cowboys loss still happened. They still have to get into the playoffs, but they feel like a playoff caliber team to me at this point. Like, the offense is so good. Defense still has its issues, and you got to think that'll probably sink them once they get into the playoffs, but they do feel like a playoff caliber team. The Falcons, quite frankly, just feel like one tier below. I still think there's a lot to like about this Falcons team. I'll put them into solid tier. Drake London is uncoverable. He's so good. They run block really well. Obviously, Bijan Robinson is great. Michael Penix was up and down, which is kind of what you expect with a rookie quarterback playing in a really high-stress situation in just his second start, and the first start was about as low stress as you can get, so it's really going from one end of the spectrum to the other. He made some real nice throws. He also made some big mistakes, and you're going to have to fix the mistakes, which you probably will. What rookie doesn't look like that? Kind of makes you feel like if they had just played him a month earlier, could he have made those mistakes in other games and maybe won this one? I don't know. Also, the coin toss was the biggest play in the game for that for those two teams. So Falcons have heard that one before. So a tough loss for Atlanta fans. I think that the future could be bright though with Michael Penix. I'll say that. And hey, the season isn't over. I know it seems like a lot for the Buccaneers to lose to the Saints next week, which is what the Falcons need. But stranger things have happened, so we'll see. But yeah, The Baltimore Ravens, who another dominant win, winning 31-2, which as a team, it's cooler to win 31-2 than 31-0. It just is. It's funnier. It's more fun, I think. Yeah, they're real contenders. If I know that the team around Lamar hasn't been quite as good this year. Lamar has been even better, and this offense is such a sledgehammer right now. They can potentially run through anybody. We've seen them destroy the Bills earlier this season. The Bills were in kind of a rough patch at that point, but still, we've seen it happen. Part of why it was a rough patch is because they had to play the Ravens. So, and the Ravens nearly beat the Chiefs. Granted, everyone nearly beats the Chiefs, but yeah, the Ravens are real contenders. The Bears are not. Their defense is playing well enough. I'll still keep them out of the bottom tier, but that's the best compliment they get. And I think they're still picking like 8th in the draft order. Like, what's going on? Poor Bears fans. The Dallas Cowboys. Yeah, I mean, I've done this a couple times where a team starts to be scrappy and look better, and I'm like, okay, hey, this team's doing all right. I bumped them up to the solid tier last week. I'm like, look at what they're doing. They're now, only a game out of 500, and they just got walloped by the Packers, or excuse me, by the Eagles, and the Eagles didn't even have their starting quarterback. So yeah, it can't be in the solid tier. Do I bump them down 2 tiers to bad? Yeah, I think CeeDee Lamb matters a lot. If they still had CeeDee Lamb, I'd keep them in scrappy. No him either. Yeah, let's bump them to bad. The Texans, who, I mean, they're just not playing good football. I still like their defense. Like, I like their defense enough, but I really just am not buying into this team too much. They have had enough good games that I'm going to still put them in the solid tier, and I still like the defense, but yeah, I mean, this is maybe being a bit generous. You could talk me into scrappy for sure. The Colts are stupid. Colts are just stupid. I made a stupid tier for them a couple weeks ago. They need to go back in that tier. How do you lose to the Drew Lock Giants? I don't care that they're probably not in this tier. They just deserve to be in bottom tier for that loss. That's where I'm putting them. They've been the most frustrating team in the league this year for me because, they do have talent. They do have pieces, and they just can't get out of their own way. Very frustrating. I'm sure it's twice as frustrating if you're a Colts fan. Yeah. That's where I have them. The Rams pull off a victory against the Cardinals. Good win for them. They feel like a playoff team, although I will say their offense needs to start playing better, right? Like, they were so dominant that game against the Bills, and it's like, here we go, playoff Matthew Stafford, and they just haven't done a lot since then, although the defense has really stepped it up. So that's nice to see if you're a Rams fan. If the offense can step it up, look out. The Chargers are next on this list, staying in LA. Yeah, I mean, they destroyed the bad New England Patriots team. Doesn't really move the needle too much for me. I put them into feels like playoffs tier before. That still feels like, I think, where I would have them. Next up is the Las Vegas Raiders, who I actually misspoke earlier when I was talking about the Bears. I said that they would be in line for the 8th overall pick. They're in line for the 9th overall pick. The Raiders are in line for the 8th overall pick. We were talking about them with the 1st overall pick just a couple weeks ago. They've been winning games, so I'll put them into scrappy tier because they're competitive. They're trying to win games. And even like the Falcons and the Buccaneers games, the Buccaneers score ended up being lopsided, but those were competitive for a bit. So yeah, they're trying hard. I don't know if that's a good thing for the franchise, but it's a good thing for if you're rooting for them to win games, I suppose. The Commanders, who, I still think this defense has issues. I can't put them in the top tier. I just can't. But they're dark horse, for sure. I mean, Jaden Daniels is so good, and I don't think he's getting enough credit for what he's done this season. He's been fantastic. To me, he should be in. He shouldn't, be considered for MVP, because in my opinion, Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow have been the best 2 quarterbacks in football, and Josh Allen's also been really good. But, he should be a guy who we talk about when we're considering guys for MVP. That's how I feel like. He's clearly a 4th best quarterback in the year for me. And when you have that, it's okay. He actually wasn't even perfect against the Falcons. Missed some throws, but his rushing ability is just something else. And that's what allowed them to ultimately win that game. And he was also able to make some really good throws in overtime and stuff like that. Chiefs, obviously, Super Bowl contenders. The fact that I 1 week decided to put them in dark horse instead of Super Bowl contenders, what was I thinking? No, the Chiefs are amazing. The Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl. Why are we even doing this? The Saints are next on this list, who I mean, they're bad. They're bottom tier. They're bad. It's not good. Saints are not playing good football, and they have an opportunity to defeat the Buccaneers, but do they even want to? Because then the Falcons could get in, and they want the Falcons to to miss the playoffs. I was saying on the podcast, I think they're going to just like triple team Mike Evans, make sure he doesn't get the record, and then let the rest of the team go wild and score a bunch of points. So that way the Falcons still don't make the playoffs, but Evans doesn't get his record of 1,000 yards. I don't know. But that feels like what they do. The Giants, who, hey, why not? They beat the Colts. I'll bump them up to bad. Drew Lock made some good plays in this one. I don't know if he's the long-term answer like Terry Bradshaw apparently thinks, but it was a fun win. Why not just bump them up a tier? The Eagles, who, I've been keeping in Super Bowl contenders now for a bit. It feels fair. This defense is awesome. Saquon Barkley is awesome. They just won a game by a ton without their starting quarterback, and their backup got injured in that game, and they didn't miss a beat then. So there's just a lot of really good stuff here with this team. I'm going to say Kenny Pickett played well. That one play, he was hit as he was throwing the ball. Okay, it looks ugly. His arm was hit. People have deceptively cut that out of the clip to make it funnier on Twitter, which it is. It is funnier without seeing that. But he was hit. It did not. It was not as big of a deal, I think. The Steelers, who I had been keeping in dark horse, I can't do that. There's no way I can do that with how they've been playing as of late. They still feel like a playoff team. They still have a really good defense. I still do like the Russell Wilson deep ball and all that, but no getting around it. It's been a tough stretch for them. Next up is the Denver Broncos, who, it's a bummer, right? They've lost a couple of games here. I didn't think they played that bad against Cincinnati. Again, Joe Burrow is such a sledgehammer as well. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the league that, Joe Burrow stuff happened. The Bengals did also make mistakes, though, that allowed the Broncos back in the game. The Broncos took advantage of some of those mistakes. I mean, that Bo Nix play at the end was great, and not only that, he had a really great deep shot earlier in the game as well. Bo Nix, that deep shot, that's the record this season for a pass that's traveled the most air yards in the NFL. So it's just perfect that Bo Nix has that record, right? I love that. It's been a fine season. I think they're going to beat the Chiefs and get in. I'll put them into feels like playoffs tier. I think they're okay. A lot of teams in that tier, interestingly enough. But yeah, the Packers are better than that tier. I'm going to put them in dark horse. Yes, it wasn't their best game of football against the Minnesota Vikings, but Vikings are a really good team, and the Packers still nearly came back and found a way to win it. So they gotta, quite frankly, they have to start playing better football earlier, but still, not the best performance we've seen from them, but I still think they're a very good team. The Panthers, who I had been putting in scrappy, they've still had good enough weeks as of late. I'm not going to drop them all the way down to the bottom tier, but bad feels fair. I mean, that was a bit of an embarrassment. It was for a team that is trying to build a winning culture. You don't want to get crushed that badly. It was the Ducks' fault, really. The Duck was the bad luck charm for them. You can't beat a team when they have a duck on the field. It's just not going to happen. So really, I shouldn't even blame them. The Cardinals, who I'll say this. Really good performance for a team that I didn't think was going to really be trying too hard the final game of the season. They did. I'll put them in solid for that. I think that was an impressive attempt. Obviously, it came down to kind of a fluky goal line interception that cost them the game. And poor Seahawks fans, they know too much about goal line interceptions at this point. So this was a solid performance. So I'll put them in a solid tier. That feels fair. Bills, of course, also Super Bowl contenders. A lot of Super Bowl contenders. 6 teams where I'm like, yeah, they feel like they belong in the top tier. You could argue, should I make a tier above? But who do I put in there? I would probably put I think the Chiefs themselves would be in the one tier above if I had to. I don't feel strongly about, just because they're the Chiefs, I don't feel strongly about one team above any of the other 6 here. So should be an interesting playoffs, especially once we get to the divisional round. But yeah, Bills took care of business. It wasn't the craziest game, but hey, blowing out a divisional opponent, never the easiest thing in the world. It is a little easier, though, when it's the Aaron Rodgers Jets late in the season. The Seahawks, that was kind of an ugly game. Defense played well against the Bears. I'll put them in solid tier. They have been officially eliminated now. Not a great job by them, certainly not. And then the Patriots, who, I made this bottom tier only to put a couple teams in it as like an insult to those bad teams. I now have 6 teams in the Dorian Thompson-Robinson Browns tier. It's not great. Not great what happened there. The Patriots, hey, could end up with the first overall pick. It's not been a great season, but not the worst consolation prize when it's all said and done. So, yeah. Interesting stuff here with all these teams. This is the tier rankings. Like I said, this will be the last one with all 32 teams that I have this season, but I will be back next week with a tier list. It'll just be with the playoff teams, so be on the lookout for that. But yeah, those are my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from y'all, and of course, as always, thanks for watching.